mindfulness mean when you are practicing with teens? So let's recall our three aspects. We're paying attention, moment by moment, in a particular way. And that way is non-judgmental, it's open, and it's with curiosity. So those are the three aspects. And when we practice mindfulness, that would be your meditation. Some young people, I never even mention the word meditation. I sometimes never mention the word mindfulness. But here are some of the practices that might be helpful to use in the classroom. And I'll go a few of them. These are based very much here on what we've used through Myriad, which is a curriculum called the Mindfulness in Schools program, curriculum.b, which is for that age group 11 to 14 that we used it with. So just stop and breathe. That's sort of a breathing space. Those of you that practice mindfulness as adults may be more familiar with that term. There might be variations on breathing practices. So how to get used to your breathing so that you start to recognize and understand what your breathing is telling you and how it can support you in managing other body reactions to certain situations. So the 7-11 or square breathing. So 7-11 is breathing in for 7 and breathing out for 11. Our square breathing is breathing in for a count, for instance, of 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and then holding for 4. And obviously you can change those numbers. People are counting in their heads, and so it depends on how fast they count as to how far they get. Finger breathing is one of my favorite practices to do with teenagers, and I've seen teenagers sitting, you'd be surprised because maybe it's seen more as a primary one, but I've seen teenagers sitting under the desk doing their finger breathing. So with finger breathing, it's just so that you can see my hand. We would count, breathe in as our finger goes up the thumb, breathe out as it goes down. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And then you reverse it. And you do this as long as you need to do. But the nice one with that is that you've got the tactile sensations as well. So for young people that don't necessarily like focusing on their breath, it's a nice way to detract a little bit from that and focus on the sensations around the fingers instead. So particularly in high stress situations or about to take a test or something like that, or about to do an oral practice. So then we've got sitting practices, nice ones for in the classroom that you might do. I used to use these sometimes as a transition between one activity and another. FOF box stands for feet on floor, bottom on chair, which is what's used in the .B program. The body scan is a nice one for using at bedtime because it's a lying down practice, a meditation. And then we go on to look at things that involve senses. So if you remember early in our definition of mindfulness, we talked about sensing what's happening in the environment. So you might do mindful eating, listening, seeing, or so on. Mindful movement can link in very nicely with PE lessons, with practices around that to really notice what's happening in the body in terms of movements moment by moment. And then these last three really are those that start dealing a lot more with the mind and thought patterns that are going on in the mind and how to deal with difficult thought patterns, things like stepping back from thoughts and sitting and watching them as if they're traffic in the road or as if they're clouds passing by in the sky, recognizing that thoughts are not facts. They don't have to be acted on. They can just be let to pass by or be curious about and non-judgmental. And finally, that dealing with difficulty is a practice that really you would only do once you've practiced quite a few of the other ones beforehand, rather than jumping straight in with something like that. And obviously the nice ones at the end there, the gratitude practices or savouring the good, which people can practice even if you don't necessarily do it through mindfulness. So the 3 good things or bringing to mind something that's good for you today or something that someone or something you'd like to say thank you for. So those are some practices that might be applicable in your classrooms that you might want to use. But obviously the most important thing really is to try and practice yourself before you start passing on to these things. That age-old analogy of putting the face mask on yourself before you put it on your students or your children if you're on an aeroplane, for instance, and the oxygen levels drop down. Work out first your own needs and then work out the needs of the students that you're working with.